Let's take a look at some charts and information on Litecoin for BraveNewCoin. So Litecoin is a proof of work network, a Bitcoin clone or fork, however you want to think about that, with some changes and additions or deletions and subtractions. Several years old now, tons of data to look at. The biggest thing on the development front lately for Litecoin has been the potential release of Mimble, Wimble, and extension blocks, which both add privacy and sidechains. We'll see what happens when it happens. I'm glad they're experimenting with this on Litecoin and not Bitcoin. I'm not a fan of extension blocks because what happens in the extension block is kind of a black box, and you're just kind of hoping that when it connects back to the main chain, no consensus rules were broken. Ideally, there's obviously ways to mitigate that, and they figure that out. But to me, that just adds an attack surface for the chain that is unwelcomed. So I'm sure they'll figure it out, but I hope they get all the kinks out on LTC first if it ever comes to BTC. Looking at Litecoin's blockchain block time, it's held around 2.5 minutes, pretty well over time. There's some disruption here from the China mining exodus, but overall it's mostly held actually below 2.5 as hash rate continually gets added to the network. LTC is merge mined with Doge, which initially, when that idea was put forth by Charlie Lee, was definitely an attempt to save Doge, which it did. But now Doge is actually bringing in more miner revenue than LTC is. As far as the hash rate itself is concerned, the halving was in August 2019. And ever since then, hash rate has just been sort of oscillating at lows and highs and not really making any new higher highs or lower lows. Here's the Chinese mining exodus. Again, you can see that on the chart here. So nothing looks bullish or bearish on that front. If we look at script miners at 4 cents per kilowatt hour, which is what most industrial miners get for electricity, all of these script ASICs are in profit. And there are a couple new ASICs coming, even though you can't really see that on the chart here. So maybe this recovery, the entirety of it, is the deployment of these new ASICs that aren't yet released to the public. But we may continue to see strong upticks in LTC hash rate based on the ASICs that are coming next month, at least being publicly released next month. And those have a pretty high profitability. This profitability calculation is probably not LTC and Doge. It's probably one or the other. So if it's not both, then the profitability is obviously even better than that looks. And here's the LTC Doge miner revenue breakdown. Historically, it was all LTC mining revenue, sort of holding up the script ASICs in the profitability realm. But now Doge is 3x almost LTC's profitability, even still with the Doge price sort of just sitting where it's sitting, even with Doge and LTC having relatively low inflation rates, sub 4%. So miners are still pretty fat and happy. The next block reward halving isn't until August 2023, so that's a ways out. Really, the most recent actual deployment or fun thing that's happened with Litecoin has been Lightbringer, which is a blockchain game in September 2020 or October 2020, I believe it was released. And that has influenced on-chain analytics or the on-chain activity greatly, immensely. And you can see that on the transaction count chart. You see a massive spike here in September 2020. There were subtle upticks happening already leading into that. Then the game hits, massive influx of people and users and transactions. Everything collapses into the new year. And then now we're still seeing sustained activity. So as bearish as I am on the fundamentals of LTC in general, it's hard to ignore transaction history like this. If you're bearish, right? It's hard to just ignore this and say it's nothing because even though it is a completely different chain now than it was prior to September 2020, you're still seeing sustained activity. So there's still people who are very likely using that game or playing that game. I assume that's what all this is. I don't actually know for sure, but I'm pretty sure it is. The other thing you can see that in a different way, as far as the microtransaction activity, the mean transaction sizes are continuing to decline on rising transaction counts. So it's almost always microtransactions, which is probably related to this game. The mempool's been pretty clear since that September spike, small uptick recently, but nothing compared to September, which isn't even on here, I don't think. Let me zoom out a little bit more. All right, so I guess there wasn't an uptick. I thought there was during that. Anyway, on-chain activity is fine as far as transactions are concerned. Another thing that's probably impacting or getting impacted is the SegWit usage, which has dropped from 92% plus to 73%. This is probably related to that Lightbringer game. If I had to guess, somebody somewhere doesn't have SegWit activated in that transaction chain. I don't really know, but SegWit transactions have declined since then. NVT, inverse measure of economic utility relative to market cap, is rising from lows. So it's not completely fully bullish, but it's still historically below levels it had been for years. So that's another way to just show the impact of the on-chain activity when that new use case basically got unlocked, and then active addresses. I mean, you can't ignore this. You just can't. Active addresses all-time high. Again, it's a different blockchain than it ever was, so you can't really compare anything pre-September 2020 to now. But this is still phenomenal for anything to see active addresses not only hit all-time highs, but sustain all-time highs for months. It's been 10 months of new all-time highs in active addresses, basically. So that was honestly shocking to me looking at that today. Looking at MVRV, measure of inverse, or a measure of market cap versus on-chain activity. I like this one better than NVT personally. For most coins, they top out around a 2x multiple. Anytime we hit a 2x multiple or higher, it's usually been an all-time high or local high for price. For LTC, that has definitely been the case. In 2013, we hit a 3x multiple nearly. In 2017, we hit a 2.5 multiple. And most recently in May, we hit a 2.1 multiple. So currently we're at 1.17. So this means if market cap increases rapidly, you need to see a strong uptick in on-chain activity in order for MVRV to not exceed that 2x multiple. So there's a lot of upper room left, but I would definitely watch this if LTC goes to 500 plus, which I think it will, based on technicals. Watch where MVRV sits, because if MVRV is above 2, if it's above 2.5, if MVRV makes a new all-time high to 3x or something, then it most certainly is closer to the top than the bottom at that point. And then just looking at Lightning Network stats for LTC, just no activity whatsoever really since the past 2 years that I've been looking at it. Most of the LN activity is definitely on BTC relative to Litecoin currently. I'm kind of surprised that the Lightbringer game hasn't used Lightning Network, but the transaction speed and mempool size and whatnot, you probably don't need a layer 2 for all the transactions that the game is bringing on the chain. It's yet to get anywhere near full as far as the mempool is concerned. Looking at Litecoin, Google trends, definitely cruising near all-time lows, but slowly, steadily upticking. Now, if this starts upticking with price, that's a really good sign. That means we're doing what we should be doing. There's new money coming in. People are looking up what is Litecoin, what is the price, blah, blah, blah. Ideally, that Google trends going forward surpasses anything we saw in 2020 and 2021 if we actually have a true speculative bubble to get this thing to 550 plus. You want to see exuberance in Google trends. You want to see new people coming in if you are super bullish. And the reason I like the 550 target on technicals is based on the 2-year MA multiplier. The green is the 2-year MA, the red is the 5x multiple, and then the white here is the midline between the two. And we're definitely above the green, below the white, and the target is still 550. In May, we almost got there, right? And a lot of charts, it almost got to the 2-year MA or the 1-year MA. Previously, LTC had cruised above that level for multiple months. I think the difference between 2017 and today is just the amount of different coins you can speculate on is far greater than it was then. And it's going to be hard to consolidate all of that degen purchasing power into one thing to allow this to cruise like this. Not saying it can't, but I think 550 is 550 plus because this will move up over time. But if it gets anywhere near that level and I was holding LTC, I would definitely be strongly considering jumping out and then look at MVRV when it's up there as well to see if MVRV is above 2 or not. My guess is it will be. And that's another excellent sign that, yeah, it's a good time to sell the highs and rebuy the lows at a later date. Looking at the 5200 cross yearly pivots VPVR volume RSI. So the 5200 is crisscrossing over and over. This just tells you that's just sideways, right? It doesn't tell you anything you don't already know, but this is getting ready to flip bullish. You could probably argue maybe Adam and Eve, W double bottom, something, ascending triangle. Anything above 220, anything above new local highs, you're probably good to go for an all-time high retest at that point. We're above all the volume resistance. The next yearly pivot up is 290-ish. Volume hasn't picked up yet. RSI not overbought yet. So I'd watch for bear divs. I'd watch for how this reacts to yearly pivots, and definitely how this reacts to local high, all-time high levels with volume. You want to see people excited to buy highs, right? Otherwise, this thing can't keep going. And then on a daily cloud, I was also kind of shocked. This is a daily Kumo breakout for an LTC over the past couple days with a pending bullish TK cross that I'll probably get today. So the cloud is telling you this looks excellent for an entry to the long side for bullish continuation. We were bullish for months and months and months, broke down, went neutral, and now we're bullish again. This doesn't guarantee 2x, 5x, 10x. It just says, hey, this is a better time than the past 6 months or however long it's been to get long again. Now, is LTC going to outperform BTC or ETH? I don't know. That's a harder sell for me. I don't doubt its strength on the USD pair. I don't doubt the fundamentals actually looking much better than they ever have. But against BTC, this thing continues to cruise at effective all-time lows. There are a couple exchanges where this actually wicked much lower, but it's probably headed to this yearly pivot support is my guess. I would much rather see this with a bull div of any kind, which it isn't quite there yet. You could argue a bull div on these lows with equal RSI. So it wouldn't surprise me if this curls up a little bit, but I don't think over time it'll outperform BTC. Some volume mean reversion target would be 0.04 by the looks of it, whatever this level is here on VPVR. If there's strength beyond that, then I like 0.08, but I highly doubt that's going to happen. And then against ETH, it's nothing but all-time lows. This does actually have really a 10-month bull div. If you're kind of loose with the rules, which I think is fine, but this thing has only made lower lows over the past 10 months since January, and yet RSI is just not quite staying in the oversold side of things. Volume is also technically dwindling, right? You got this crescendo in volume on the way down, and then ever since 065, ever since this yearly pivot, volume is pretty much flattened out. So I don't hate some sort of strength against BTC and ETH for LTC. I just don't think over time that'll hold up. But where this sits on the USD pair looks really good. Fundamentals look good. Like I keep saying, I was shocked to see active addresses at all-time highs like that. I just don't see anybody. Nobody talks about LTC. They talk about AVAX and Sol and DeFi and Joe and a bunch of other junk, but I don't see anything anywhere about LTC. Lastly, I'll just mention the ETH-BTC fund and DeFi portfolio. I trade for Tech and Capital on Enzyme.finance, a non-custodial portfolio management tool where you can send ETH or USDC or just watch what I'm doing. You can see everything, including AUM, performance, allocation, all of the vaults I'm sitting in here on Unicomp and Aave, as well as the trades and deposits in the trades and deposits tab down below. That's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.